On behalf of Amy and Thad and Wyatt, I'm honored to welcome you to today's remembrance of Silas Bryant Berrier, beloved son, brother, nephew, cousin, and friend. Could you please take a moment to silence your phones? Today's celebration and remembrance is also a celebration of the Tamworth community and its spirit rippling out to and in from our neighboring towns and hills and valleys, down and up our eastern seaboard, and right across this country. We help each other in this small town. Children here tend to address adults by their first names, and adults here tend to speak to children as people. We think of everyone in town as our neighbor, and we know when there's hardship and when there's joy. We tend to make less money here, and we tend to make it go far. We are fiercely independent, particularly in our Tamworth brand of interdependence. This spirit of Tamworth infused how Thad and Amy raised Silas. I speak for many when I say that Amy and Thad's parenting was an important model in how we parent our children. When my daughters were 4 or 5, Silas was 10 or 11. Somehow he got me over to their house to fix us up with bikes Thad had saved out for local little kids. In my memory, not long after I returned home, Silas called to tell me he'd goofed. His dad had other plans for the bikes. We learn a lot from this story. Silas's generosity of spirit, his maturity in being able to not only call an adult, but to admit he was mistaken, and of course the fact that my kids can't ride bikes because of that. When he was 15, Silas convinced his Uncle Jeb to let him come out to Colorado and be an intern for the Telluride Comedy Festival. As I understand it, Jeb reluctantly agreed. And then, instead of being saddled with a kid in the way, Jeb found a hustling problem solver, great with people, ready to figure out what needed doing and how best to help. Of course he did. Silas had scooped ice cream at the other store. He'd been on scores of job sites with his mom and dad. He'd helped park hundreds of vans at Reach the Beach. In short, he'd had the quintessential Tamworth upbringing. I think it is because Amy and I married into this Tamworth life that we find it so remarkable and that we so wanted to raise our kids here. Today is symbolic of the Tamworth we love. Among us are people housing guests, providing, sharing, or donating food, music, and this gathering space. It's the same neighborliness and hospitality that we've been hearing again and again in the stories from Telluride. We heard that Silas had found and become part of a great community. After the accident, they too were housing guests, providing, sharing, or donating food, music, and gathering space. And ever since, we've heard so many stories of Silas housing guests, providing and sharing food and comedy and the Rockies. We will hear a lot today about the joy with which Silas lived his life. Silas faced a lot of pain and frustration amid that joy. It is probably that joy that underlies the fact that Silas lived such a remarkably full life in his all too short time with us. At the end of our remembrances, Wyatt and Amy and Thad will invite us to a very Tamworthian reception. It will give us another chance to add to the picture of Silas we are about to have shared with us.
Hi, my name's Jeb Berrier. I am the uncle, aforementioned uncle, that I don't want to say I lured him out to Telluride, but I think I might have enticed him to come. I just want to say that backing up from that, I was going to say that I met Silas originally because I was his uncle, which is how that works. But I was thinking about it this morning and thinking what a lucky uncle I am and have been. Because not only was Silas my nephew, but Wyatt is my nephew. And two of the most amazing, as you all know, two of the most amazing guys you could ever meet, let alone have in your family. So thank you, Amy and Thad. Silas and I really sort of hit it off at an early age. I think our cousin Ashby would agree, like as an actor and a sort of creative person, he was like, we were in sync, And just going over to the house when he was 3 years old and listening, like I walked in one time and I heard these little voices, like, I'm like, what is that? And he said, oh, that's just Silas, he's playing. Like, well, who's he playing with? Oh, he's just playing by himself. But he had this amazing imagination right from the beginning, and he was always hilarious. He fell in love with comedy as a teenager, but as a kid, he was hilarious. One story that I like to tell, when I would come, and I was usually coming from somewhere far away, like I always lived somewhere far away, but at Christmas time, I would come to Tamworth, and I would usually get in really late at night, maybe Christmas Eve, or whenever it was that I came in, the rule was, Wyatt and Silas, you can't wake up Jeb. You have to let him sleep. And they'd say, okay. And, they would be up at 6, and they developed this technique. And they weren't allowed to wake me up. But Silas would sit in the doorway and stare. And I would be sleeping, and if I did happen to notice that they were there, I'd be like, oh, I'll just keep sleeping, and they're not allowed to wake me up. And then Silas would start going, Jeb. Jeb. I'm like, oh boy, all right, I can ride this out. Jeb, are you awake? It was hilarious and also a brilliant tactic. He always, as everybody's going to talk about his compassion, and that was really one of his defining features, is that he always seemed to think about other people. And, that's something that I think is learned through your community and your family. But there's another story, and I'm sorry if I'm going to go on, but I really love this that happened. I don't even know if you guys know about this, but it was another visit when he was really, really young, like 4 years old, and they didn't get to watch movies very much, probably why they turned out so well. Let that be a lesson to all of us. And Silas said to me when I got there, Jeb, have you seen Snow White? I'm like, yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Well, we're going to watch Snow White. But don't be afraid of the part with the trees, okay? Don't be afraid. There's a part with the trees, but it's not scary at all. It's not scary at all. Like, okay, good. All right. Okay, good. We'll probably just watch it up to just past the part with the trees, but don't be afraid. And so after dinner, we went upstairs, and I was sitting next to him on the floor, and he was like maybe 4, maybe 3. He was this tiny guy, and we're sitting next to each other. Like, Jeb, it's not yet. You know, what do you think of the movie, Jeb? What do you think of the movie? I'm like, it's pretty good. I love it. It's Snow White, you know, it's classic. And then, okay, Jeb, here come the part with the trees. Here's the part in the woods, Jeb. And he reached over and he grabbed my hand, and he started squeezing my hand, and he kept going, see, Jeb, it's not scary. It's not scary at all, Jeb. Right? Right? It's not scary. Are you okay, Jeb? Are you okay? And then shortly after that, we turned the movie off, and it was time for bed, and he got up, and there was a tiny little wet spot on the carpet. And I used to think about that, and I thought, oh my gosh, you know, he was sort of like, oh, it's not scary, I'll talk myself into it's not scary, but I really honestly think that he was worried about me, you know, as a grown-up, like, you're okay, Jeb, you're okay, we're gonna get through this together. As he got older and I moved out to Telluride, as Chris said, that this crazy thing happened where I put on this comedy festival every year. And it was a big part of my winter. It was a big endeavor. It was a lot of work. There were, you know, important people that came to town, and Silas knew that I'd do it. And he was getting into comedy, and he was 15, right? He's a sophomore in high school. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call that Silas wants to come out and be my assistant or my intern. He wants to come from Tamworth, New Hampshire, by himself to Telluride, Colorado, right? One little New England town to one weird little mountain town, you know, like through Denver and however that works. And he's going to help me out on this festival. And I'm thinking, oh boy. I mean, honestly, I love him, but this is going to be extra work, right? I mean, I'm already managing a bunch of stuff, and I don't know. Okay, great. I love him. He's my nephew. Let's do it. He wants to do it. He figured the whole thing out pretty much with Amy's help, but he made it happen. Like a 15-year-old kid, made it all happen and sold the idea to his parents and to me, and he came out, and man, it was the best thing ever. It was just, you know, it was not only super helpful, but it was incredibly fun to have him. And this young guy, you know, and he was, like Chris said, like a hard worker. He showed up. He's like, where do you need me to be? Eventually, I just said, look, if I'm doing something else, you just go to the Opera House and check in, and they will give you a task. And he just immediately became everybody's like go-to guy, little buddy. They made a title for him of Chief Schlepper, which he retained for every year that he worked the Comedy Fest. And it was really amazing. And I was kind of blown away. The next year he couldn't come, and I was really disappointed, you know? And so what that led to was he came back the year after, and the year after that, and then at 2019 or 2018, he decided that he wanted to move to Telluride, and he made that happen just by this sort of soft, gentle determination and this kind of gentle way that he had about, but a gentle way that he had about just, I'm going to keep going, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to make it happen. And he ended up being there, and he had this really incredible community there, just like here, that this guy showed up. And at first he was Jeb's nephew. You know, in the beginning, I was actually leaving, and he was getting there, like, pretty much right after. And at first, people are like, oh, you're Jeb's nephew, that's cool, you know. And every year, I would come back to do the Comedy Fest, and every year was more like, oh, this is really becoming more of Silas's town, you know. And at a certain point, you're Silas's uncle. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know he had an uncle. like, wait a second, hold on. But that was kind of the rightful transition that the guy did. He kept doing it, and then one day he told me a few years ago, like, hey, I started doing comedy. I'm doing it on my own. And they started doing open mics, and he started doing little bits around town, and he made that start happening. And I was like, wow, okay, great. The last year, 2 years ago, the last year we were able to do a festival, he said, I want to do a local comedy festival and coordinate it, have it coincide with the big comedy festival. I said, you know what? Great. We'll put yours together. You put together a roster, and we'll do that at the end of the comedy festival in the sort of venue little bar downstairs. And he did it. He got 5 or 6 people together that he had been doing comedy with. He organized the whole thing. I said, hey, we're doing Comedy Fest. There's a lot to do. He's like, I got it. I'll take care of it. I've got it. He kept checking. He's like, I've got this guy and this guy and this guy, and it's going to go like this. And I'm like, great, sounds great. You're off and running, fantastic. And we did the comedy festival, and he helped out every night for that. And then Sunday night, we all went downstairs, and it was Silas's show. And Silas had these local comedians. Some of them were better than others, let's just say. But I will tell you something. Silas was funny. He was really, really, truly funny. And he made jokes about his family, which I don't think I can share. I was like, whoa, I don't think you can do that one in Tamworth. But just to say that it was just amazing to watch a guy like that sort of come into his own in that way, in that community, and do things that he loved. I was really proud of him. And the last night that I saw him was after that show, and we were out, and he was surrounded by his friends, and it was sort of like his moment of glory, you know? And he had these people around him, and he had his comedy buddies, and he said, he just looked so proud of what he had done, you know? And he said, you know, thank you so much for giving me this, for Telluride and comedy and all these things that I love. And I'm just so grateful that I could see, if that's the last time that I saw him, well, it's a really good memory. There's a little poem that I read, and I know I've gone on for probably too long, but I read this in Telluride, and it just struck me when we lost Silas sort of literally out of the blue, unexpectedly, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. But the fact that he had so many people who loved him wherever he went, whether it was here, whether it was Telluride, that is an accomplishment. In however long your life is, that is truly an accomplishment. And there's a poem that I really like by Raymond Carver. And he wrote this poem. It's the last poem that he wrote. And he knew that he was not long for this world. It's not the same scenario, but I think the message is really apt. It's called Late Fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. And Silas did that. We love you, Silas.
Well, hello. I look out and I see a few faces that I recognize, not many, and a lot that I don't recognize, and you're probably saying the same thing about me. So let me introduce myself and maybe why I'm up here. My name's David McGrew, and excuse me. Up? Okay, good. Okay. 74 years ago, my Aunt Lillian bought and moved into the house on Bryant Road, the first house. And after she died in 1994, my sister Jane and I inherited the house. And along with my sister, her daughter Caroline, her husband, and their young son Christian came. And yes, we're summer people. I admit it. But Tamworth has played a role in my life as long as I've been alive. So it was really through the children that the Berriers and the McGrews and the Conlon families have bonded. Caroline's son is Christian. He's the same age as Wyatt, I think. And close enough. And, the three boys got along beautifully. It was just marvelous to see these three kids spending summers together. I'm sure I'm not the one who knows Silas the best. Jeb told me a lot that I'd never known about. It's possible that I might have known him the longest, because the first time I encountered Silas was in the company of his mother. My habit was to, in the morning, get up, walk across the bridge to the cash market, talk to Raymond and Irene and see how the world had gone the day before, pick up a couple newspapers and walk back and spend my morning. And that's when I met Amy coming back from a jog, and she had this beautiful young child. I thought it was a kite. It was some kind of a stroller contraption that looked like a kite to me, but and I looked down, and really Silas was so contented, and he just smiled and looked, and I thought, what a charming young child. Curiosity came to my mind as well, that, he wanted to know who I was and what's going on here. Well, soon enough, Jane's daughter Caroline and her husband moved to Tamworth and spent 1 year here. And in that 1 year, their daughter Maria was born. She had the good fortune to be born on the 4th of July. So the 4th of July got to be a real big deal on Bryant Road. And I, being the uncle, I got to be the goofy uncle, and I bought all kinds of bunting, and, of course, we had the flag out. The 4th of July parade was a bit of a source of contention between Thad and the boys and me and my nephew. Silas and Wyatt always won the bike competition. Christian came in third 1 year, and the McGrews don't, we don't have a lot of awards and stuff, not that we're bad people or that we're undeserving, but what we have, what Christian got to put on his wall was a third place ribbon in the Tamworth 4th of July, while Wyatt and Silas got first and second. My fondest memory, though, is of the three of them. We have had a shed in the backyard, and they found this homemade ladder. They got the ladder out, propped it against the shed, and the three of them would be sitting up there conjuring up who knows what. I would just sit in the house and watch them. I'm thinking, what are they thinking? What pirate ship is going to come down the Bearcamp River? What monsters are going to come out of the woods? And how are they going to conquer all of them? That's a memory I'll always have. It's just magic. Our plan of spending summers in Tamworth was really not sustainable. So I don't know the boys as teenagers too well. When Amy brought Silas out to Telluride, they stopped at my family's house in Illinois. We got to touch base then. 4 years ago, 2017, my great-nephew Christian got married, and the whole Berrier family came to the wedding. Wyatt was in Washington State. Silas was in Telluride, and Amy and Thad were in Tamworth, and they all came together for this wedding. And then they invited us here that following Thanksgiving. And we had such a wonderful time. The distillery was new. I didn't know about that. I might still be living here, might not have sold the house if knew there was going to be a distillery in town. But so, as the boys grew up and were teenagers and now adults, we had not too many times where we got together, but there was always a bond between your family and our family. The Silas I knew was calm and soft-spoken, polite, courteous, and intelligent. Amy, Thad, Wyatt, I can't know the depth of your grief, but my family, the Conlins and the McGrews, can share your sorrow. And along with everybody in this room, there's a song lyric that came to my mind. It's by that great American poet, Jerry Garcia, from the Grateful Dead. The song is Ripple. There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Silas, you are on a journey we all must take one day. Know that you are always, always in my heart. Travel in peace, Silas.
Hello, we're representing the hometown friends here today. Michael, Grace, and Lindsay. I'm gonna let them do the talking though.
Hi. One of my earliest memories is with Silas. He and I used to play with these two cloth dolls called Star and Moon when we were at their house. We'd make up stories, build forts for them, because the Berriers had the best yard for forts and all things tree climbing. Later, in high school, Silas was on a school trip, and he excitedly texted me saying, "I found something for you." He had picked out a star and moon ring that he had seen in a shop, and I have been wearing it every single day since then. In high school, the Tamworth kids stuck together. Endless carpools with Michael, Sienna, Eliza, Will, and sometimes Emmeline. Way, way too much candy at the other store. Sorry, Katie, Sour Patch Kids were us. Summers of camping and so many creamery trips before it closed at 9. Michael and Silas are still the only people who could convince me to sleep on the ground. Silas was always in charge of our adventures, coming up with the most fun plans and ideas. He always had tons of schemes. Most of them were legal. I feel so incredibly lucky to have grown up here with Silas. He was one of those people who made you feel safe and welcome no matter the situation. He was someone who could sit down and be friends with anyone and have them laughing in less than 30 seconds.
When I started high school, my cousin told me that Bartlett kids and Tamworth kids always end up being friends. She was right. I met Silas in homeroom during our freshman year, and I was quickly drawn in by his unique sense of humor. It didn't take long for me to consider him one of my closest friends. Being a Bartlett kid, we didn't spend much time together outside of school at the beginning of our friendship. However, long before the days where everyone had Zoom fatigue, we would procrastinate our homework together by sitting on Skype, where Silas would show me many of the knickknacks he had in his bedroom. Some of my favorite memories with Silas include skiing at Bretton Woods with him and Grace on Sundays, filming him while he ate 21 Hoodsie cups at lunch our sophomore year. The video is still on YouTube if anyone wants to watch Silas eat ice cream for 12 minutes. We went to prom together, and we spent the night dancing until the music stopped with him and Michael. And we spent a lot of time wandering around Burlington, Vermont when I was in college. Over the years, Silas always made a point of celebrating my birthday, whether it was a card or a phone call. I have a quote from my 15th birthday card that I wanted to share. This is the card. Yes, it was an Axe hair gel box. The card says, "I'd like to explain how glad I am to know you. I'm pretty glad because you get my humor, and for some reason, neither of us do homework. All in all, you're an awesome person, and I'm a better person for knowing you." That's the type of friend that he was. Silas always knew how to make you feel special, and we are all better people for having known him.
So a couple weeks ago, three of us had met together to just kind of celebrate Silas's life and share some stories, and we decided to design a little sticker. So if you want to find any of the three of us after, we've got a lot of these. We'd love to spread them around.
Hello. My name's Kate, and Silas and I. Nope. I'm a Viking. I'm a Viking. I'm a Viking. It's what Silas and I always used to say to get through anything. We always used to say also, don't be a gummy bear. I don't know where it came from, but it seemed to help and it seemed to make us laugh. I sat to write this speech approximately 100 times. But what do I say? What do I say to a community of people? Oh my gosh. Who had a hand in raising the incredible person I would come to love. Don't be a gummy bear. Gosh. How do I ever explain to Tamworth and his community, including university, high school, the whole area, how grateful I am for the person Silas grew into? I don't need to explain to you, to those who know Silas, how incredibly kind, empathetic, and golden-hearted he was. Silas made a mark on absolutely everybody he interacted with. He was a true son of Tamworth. So it dawned on me, sitting on the rock behind Linda's house, thank you, and that all that I can offer you is the knowledge of what Silas's life looked like in Telluride and what our life was about to look like in the future. A Viking gummy bear would be pretty funny. Just wet and a puddle of mush like me right now. We had big dreams of travel and spreading love and laughter around the world. He would choose the destination, and I would navigate us there. Meeting every shopkeeper, night audit, local shaman along the way. Silas had one of those incredibly rare, one-in-a-million type of souls. He and his trusted steed, Boone, taught me so much in such a short time. And I feel so lucky to have been given the opportunity to love them even just for a moment. I will continue to love them for a lifetime, to come as my celestial adventures guide me along. It is no doubt how incredibly funny Silas was. What he brought in hilarity, he also matched in love to everything he touched. A trait that I'm still in awe of, the same awe and respect that I have for all of you here today and his community. Thank you for allowing me to borrow your son of Tamworth for just a little bit in Telluride. I will continue to see life through his sunshine eyes, and just as Silas did, I will always seek the joy of being alive every day.
Before I tell you who I am, I realized a moment ago that this is my big chance to tell you that I'm, in some ways, a veritable son of Tamworth, too. As I like to say, from diapers until divorce, I was a loyal and dedicated summer kid in nearby Silver Lake, New Hampshire, growing up in a home that my maternal grandparents purchased in the 30s, and which was handed down to my mother and my aunt. And I grew up a child of the White Mountains, and now I am an adult of the White Mountains. And I have hiked every year of my life since I was 3 years old. And when I was a kid, my brother Roger and I, and this was back before parenting became what it is today, we were told as we left the door each morning, just come back for dinner. And we would often walk to the old Chocorua store up from what was then called Deer Hill before it became officially Deer Hill. And sometimes we'd go to Tamworth because Tamworth was very cool. Tamworth was so cool, we bought a stallion in Tamworth, and we rode him for several years. And this is the principal irony of my life, that my parents, who didn't say such things ordinarily, my dad was a lapsed Quaker, my mother was sort of a pagan heathen, they said that you can go to Tamworth, but don't stray as far as Sandwich. Sandwich was, as I like to tell my wife, forbidden to us, because Sandwich was seen as high and mighty. And I have to say, now having been a denizen of Sandwich for 21 years, it still is. So when my wife and I, who were both born in Manhattan in New York City, when we decided to leave Chicagoland with our two boys and come to Sandwich, I was filled with a sort of dread and an eagerness all at once. The eagerness because I would get closer to my mountains than ever before, and the dread because, well, it was Sandwich. And because I needed something to do, we had essentially switched roles. I had been for a number of years an English professor. Because I needed something to do, and I've always been a teacher at heart, I created something called Sandwich Lot Baseball. And of course, sandwich in the first few years of Sandwich Lot Baseball's existence was very hard on my little program. We like to say that the pitchforks and torches came out. And the great thing about Sandwich Lot, we just wrapped up our 21st season just this past week. The great thing about Sandwich Lot is during its strongest years, it was fueled by a Tamworth, a decidedly Tamworth pipeline. I offer as my beginning a slightly altered version of the final 2 lines of a poem by Theodore Roethke, Elegy for Jane. I, with no rights in this matter, neither father nor brother. And now 11 lines from Shelley's Adonais, which he wrote upon learning of the death of Keats. He is made one with nature. There is heard his voice in all her music, from the moan of thunder to the song of night's sweet bird. He is a presence to be felt and known in darkness and in light, from herb and stone, spreading itself where'er that power may move, which has withdrawn his being to its own, which wields the world with never wearied love, sustains it from beneath, and kindles it above. He is a portion of the loveliness which once he made more lovely. And lastly, a letter I wrote yesterday to a boy I will always admire and love. Dearest Silas, did I ever tell you I used to think of you as Little Bear? Not B-E-A-R, but B-E-R apostrophe, in part because the elision made way for the obvious, if terribly unclever, pun, though principally because, well, you didn't seem to me to be ursine at all. Your big brother, Wyatt, was Big Bear, of course, and that seemed only logical, as even way back then he was, for his age, shockingly tall. The first time I met you, I was surprised by how serious you were. Believe me, it was an intensity I recognized. And I remember how when I'd call out in that stentorian style all good coaching requires, "Sandwich ladders, give me a knee!" You'd be right there in the front row on the instant, your eyes glinting mica, your throwing side knee firmly down in the greened up firma, your stride foot perfectly placed in that all-important simulated land, your face shadowed by both the brim of your cap and an earnestness far beyond your years. And, Little Bear, I tell you, I could see you were ready and then some to take the field and put in a good day's work. And when you took the field of a Saturday morning, oh, I remember it like it was proverbial yesterday. You roared right out there, fierce and focused, every part of you brimming and fiery and undeniable as the oncoming sun. It was, for me, always about the effort you gave. It was purest effort, for one thing, as it came straight from your big, big heart. It was ceaseless, like the flow of a dependable stream. It was noble in that it never failed to aim high. And because it aimed so high, there were days when it flat out soared. It was finally, as effort, a sort of blessing for all of us looking on, because it showed us who and what you were, transparently, indubitably, ineluctably. And all of us, because of the effort you gave, were, whether we knew it or not, instantly transformed. You made us believe we could, by dint, yes, of trying as hard as we could, perhaps even harder than we ever had, be better than we were. I've always been an effort guy myself, a proponent, you could fairly say, of putting in the work. My architect grandfather was an effort guy. I idolized him in no small part because he had no quit, made no excuses, and suffered no foolishness, especially in himself. And all my heroes, when I think on it, are effort guys. John Keats, Hank Aaron, George Mallory, and you. Funny thing, though, lately I've been putting an extra sort of effort into everything I do. Half of an ancient maple came down in our yard earlier this month. I toppled the tottering, towering rest of it with a hand winch and bull rope, made quick work of the massive trunk with my chainsaw, had the entire sawdusty mess cleaned up within a couple of hours, and then spent the next few days splitting and hauling and stacking. You could say I was trying, and I'm putting this as precisely as I can, to make the edge of my effort a little sharper, a little more little bear keen. And speaking of keen, not 2 days after I'd wheelbarrowed the last of the split maple logs to what has always been the woodpile making area at the western edge of our yard, a Cooper's hawk appeared in the space of sky the fallen maple's canopy had occupied for half a century. It was avian opportunism at its finest. Over the next week or so, we heard him about midway up a nearby white pine. A Cooper's hawk's mate-attracting scream is unmistakable and comes when he's intent on hooking up at almost metronomic intervals. And then, unexpectedly, the plot thickened. A broad-winged hawk appeared in the lower branches of the very same pine, about 2 stories down from the Coopers, if you will. And over the next few days, man, did they go at it, like a pair of New York City apartment dwellers squabbling about unneighborly noise. I couldn't but admire the hawk's tenacity. Each was after the same just-opened real estate, and neither for a moment backed down. But what most impressed me was the sheer effort behind their twinned disputatiousness, the force and frenzy of their vigor, the keen, that interesting word again, of their determination to throw the whole of their hawkness at what for them must have been, so it seemed to onlooking me, no more and no less than an all or nothing enterprise. A paradox, then, before I sign off. I'm a man of little faith who believes, who has to believe, and simply at times for the sake of his own survival, that there are presences in our lives that are more felt than known, that touch us in ways that words have no answer for, that move us because we cannot say precisely what they mean. As Wordsworth puts it at the end of his poem, Nutting, there is a spirit in the woods. A few weeks ago, I said to your brother, we were driving together to a small New Hampshire art gallery to see, get this, a single work of art, a singularly lovely painting of cloud and rock and light and trees. And fittingly, I should add, we were talking about you. And I said, and it kind of welled up in me on the sudden, the way a breeze comes up sometimes just as one reaches the timberline. He isn't gone, you know. He's everywhere around us, in the wind, in the mountains, in the trees. It's inevitable and ineffable all at once. And Big Bear seemed to understand exactly what I was speaking of. And he said in that Wyatt, quiet way of his, yes. And suddenly everything, every molecule of earth and sky, every quivery fiber and filament of being of which this world is made, felt beautiful and peaceful, bountiful and beneficent, and oh, so unified and whole. I'll be thinking of you, little bear, in precisely the way I always have, as the embodiment of effort in soundest, most scintillating form. Thank you for being who and what you are, for being an extraordinary loveliness in an often not so lovely world, and most of all, for showing us day in and day out that how one approaches a task, simple or complex, it makes no difference, can sustain and kindle our spirits, even spur and inspire us to do godlike things, and, as your example clearly shows, wield the world with never wearied love.
Grief and gratitude. How can there be words to adequately express either one? The deepest feelings of these two emotions have bookended our days during the tumultuous blur of time gone by, since that moment on a sunny June morning when our lives were forever changed with news that no one should ever hear, but some of us do. As we grapple with the incomprehensible loss of Silas, our hearts ripped wide open and raw with grief. Family, friends, and in fact, our entire community has held us close, caring for us in countless ways, gently helping us to knit our lives back together. Please know, all of you, that we are so incredibly grateful for your gifts of kindness to our family. Gathering here together to share words of love and recollection will be a start towards a life without Silas, our friend, my son. We are all so much richer by the fact that he was in our lives and will continue to live in our memories. I hope that you will all take some time today to share your memories of Silas, either by writing in the memory book or jotting down a few thoughts on one of the index cards set around the tent. I want to share a few excerpts from an essay that Silas wrote about his experience at Camp Belknap on the shores of Lake Winnipesaukee. He wrote with joy, humor, and appreciation of his time there over 5 summers. Getting a glimpse into his reflections on this camp and his response to receiving a scholarship to attend there each summer helps make sense of how Silas related to the world and to others. Here's how he expressed his gratitude for such a priceless gift. Looking back over my childhood from the threshold I now stand on, I recall the countless experiences I have been a part of. Above all else is my time at Camp Belknap and the life-changing impact it had on me. Aside from other campers, there are few people I know who fully understand this as I do. My time spent beneath the mystical and towering pines of Belknap, growing up beside these boys, changed them from just my friends to my brothers. Together we learned that selflessness and the ability to put others before oneself is one of the highest values you can embrace. After my final session at camp, I wanted to give back in any way I could in gratitude for the amazing generosity that Belknap had shown towards me. A large donation was beyond my reach, so I searched for other avenues to channel my goal. Finally, I found it: improving the Huckins Belknap dance. This dance, a highlight of every senior camper's career, was infamous for its chronically overheating speakers, single flicker strobe light, and uninspiring playlists. Having recently started a DJ business, I offered to DJ the dances for free. I have now returned 4 times and have been dubbed the official DJ of Camp Belknap. The campers love it. The leaders are thankful, and I have found a way to give back. It is not the way in which you do something, said my senior cabin leader, but rather its ability to satisfy yourself, others, and the task you seek to complete. Camp Belknap and the ethos it instilled in Silas at an early age shaped him. He took the camp motto, "Seek the joy of being alive," as his own. This phrase guided his moral compass until his last days. It was the final line written in his journal, found with him the day he died. It is inscribed on the stone that will mark his final resting place, high on a bank overlooking our beloved Bearcamp River. Silas was a wise soul, filled with lightness and dark, humor and a keen wit, profound generosity, and sincere compassion towards those around him. May we all hold the memory of his kind and giving spirit as a guiding light out of the incredible sadness we all share. When I searched for words to articulate my grief as a mother, it was hard to find any that would suffice. And so I turned to poetry and to music, humanity's timeless odes to sorrow and to joy. I will share with you a poem I wrote for Silas, followed by the heartbreakingly beautiful tune, Ashokan Farewell. Both soothe my soul. for Silas. You traveled swiftly through that dark night, shattering into fragments of starlight, reflected in broken shards across the hushed landscape. You lay, crumpled in your earthen cradle, yellow wildfire flowers standing sentinel to a broken body in solemn honor as the dawn broke. As your spirit rose and stepped away, Boone by your side, snow-capped mountains surrounded you, beckoning with breathtaking glory. We gathered there to know the place where who you were ceased to be. The pit of grief was bottomless, and we fell headlong into the abyss. We are so changed without you. We know not how to be. And yet, we are so changed because of you and our witness to your life as you so boldly lived it. Now we stand and step forward, climbing from the depths of our sorrow, refusing to hold you only in grief, welcoming joy as it comes. There is a place high above the sparkling river where the ashes of your being will tuck into the welcoming ground, a touchstone for our memories. May your sweet spirit not be held there, but rather embrace and caress us where we are, unexpected as a warm Chinook on a winter's day.
First of all, I have some explaining to do. This was Silas's kilt. I hope I'm wearing it right. We have some Scottish background, and Silas and Kate were going to be married in Scotland, and he was going to be wearing this kilt. Before I share memories of my brother with all of you, I'm compelled to acknowledge others first. Losing Silas has opened our eyes to the immense pain and unfillable void that are created when a loved one leaves this world before their time is up. Even in our small Tamworth community, there are more families than we realize that have experienced losses of this magnitude over the years. Struggling with a tragedy such as this is a weight no one should have to bear. A parent should never have to bury their child. A sibling never dreams of saying goodbye. But sometimes the choice is not ours to make, however much we wish to dig our heels into the earth and refuse to accept a harsh new reality. With profound love, affection, and a strong familial bond comes great risk. In an instant and without warning, someone you hold so dearly can be ripped from your arms, their flame extinguished like a candle in a rogue gust of wind. There are many gathered here with us today who have suffered equally as much and who continue to cope long after their loved one has passed on. The pain never goes away, or at least I can imagine it to be so. Please join me now in a moment of remembrance for the members of our community who have been lost far too soon, and let us all hold their families in a warm embrace. This flame represents the light that their memories still shine into our lives, and the hope that we must continue to seek in our darkest times. I am so very proud of my younger brother for all that he accomplished in his short but vibrant life. He also overcame immense adversity, for which my pride runs deeper still. Between the two of us, Silas had always been more the pioneer. Although I am 2 years older, he was the first to be in a relationship and the first to officially move out of the house while I was still gallivanting around the UNH campus. After growing up on the banks of the Bearcamp River and taking full advantage of everything this special part of the world has to offer, he made the decision to strike out on his own and blaze a new path for himself. Upon graduating high school, his heart was set on moving out to Telluride, a famous ski town tucked away in a Colorado box canyon. Our Uncle Jeb had lived there for 2 decades prior, so this was somewhat familiar territory. Silas quickly found his way, settling into life in the West and establishing himself in that town purely based on his own merit. He was able to purchase a home in Telluride 2 years ago after relentlessly advocating on his own behalf to get a mortgage with no cosigner. Right around the same time, his trusting companion, Boone, came into his life as a newly adopted puppy, and they remained thick as thieves for the rest of their days. Silas's favorite time to check in with me was when the two of them were walking down the river trail near his house together. He would be whistling at Boone, telling him to keep up and stay out of mischief. That dog would chase thrown rocks up and down the river until fatigue set in, then promptly proceed to haul small logs down the trail. Not sticks, no, logs. Each time Boone managed to drag one of these mammoth branches out of the bushes, I was stunned that he never pulled a neck muscle. Last summer, I spent 10 glorious days visiting these two guys in Telluride. Unbeknownst to either of us, this would be the second to last time on this planet, in this plane of existence, that my brother and I would ever see each other. The day after I arrived, we went on an arduous hike up to a lake high in the mountains at nearly 11,000 feet. He was wasting no time in putting my lungs to the test. Silas had picked me up from the airport in his friend's car with embarrassingly shaky brakes after having sold his own recently. So we drove his boss's Audi 6.5 hours to Denver, where he bought a lightly used 4Runner without telling Mom and Dad right away. It was just the two of us Berrier boys up to some mischief again like old times. The car salesman's name was Larry Lewis, so naturally that's what we called his new ride. Just 2 days after his fresh purchase, we took Larry Lewis high up over Imogene Pass between Telluride and Ouray. This was a journey not for the faint of heart. The road wound its way up the treacherous mountain slopes, climbing to the heavens as we approached the maximum elevation of 13,114 feet. I was looking over at him as he drove, cool as a cucumber, while I rode shotgun with white knuckles and my heart lodged in my throat. But that's the way he always tackled challenges, head on, with confidence and calm composure, never afraid. We were almost to the top when we stopped for a break, and that is when I captured the best photo I've ever taken of my brother. Crouched with Boone on the mossy rocks, they both seem to stare through you, into your soul and beyond, with a wisdom that we cannot understand. This painting was directly inspired by that moment, lovingly created by my good friend Sam Aldrich. Our family will treasure this work of art forever, and it will hold a prominent place in our home. Thank you also to John Ferreira for generously printing this photo of Ice Lake, an image Mom captured while on a hike with Silas and Boone during one of her visits out west. He had forgotten his jacket by the lake, and Mom was awaiting their return, so if you look closely, you can see the two of them coming down the path, mere specks in the distance. One summer when we were kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old, I remember riding with Mom and Silas in the car right around June 16th, which falls directly between our half-birthdays on the 11th and 21st. He and I had been scheming, as we often did, and had come up with a thoughtful proposition. Our reasoning went like this. Hey, Mom, hear us out. Since 2 halves make a whole, and since we've got 2 half-birthdays, could we please go to Chinese food tonight? And you know what? We did just that. There's no doubt in my mind that we got ourselves a poo-poo platter and some Shirley Temples that night. From here on out, June 16th will have a whole different meaning for our family, but next year we may have just have to swing by Peking Sunrise for old time's sake. Silas's life was not all peaches and cream, but he damn well made the most of the cards he was dealt. In high school, he was ravaged by incessant, unpredictable, and debilitating migraines. When they struck, he would have no choice but to retreat to his room, block out all light and sound, and wait for the episodes to pass, often lasting days. As a result of this, he missed months of school and was barely able to graduate on time. After agonizing for years over finding the answer to his migraine relief, a specialized form of chiropractic care was recommended to him, which specifically manipulated the atlas bone, or C1, at the base of his cranium. This solved the issue, as his top vertebrae had been misaligned for years without us knowing. With proper routine maintenance, he had found a solution to finally be free and clear of these crippling migraines. His second and less widely known burden to bear, for which he faithfully took medication every day of his life after being diagnosed, was bipolar disorder. I cannot imagine the internal struggle he must have had, knowing that this mental health condition would forever loom over his head, and that he would go through life without wanting his family and friends to know about it, from fear of being ostracized. Mental health should not be taboo in any way, shape, or form. Those of us living with similar conditions deserve love and support from everyone around them. We are all here for each other and are in this life together. We are part of this incredibly wholesome community, which we cannot take for granted. I was truly proud of my brother for carrying this immense weight and for doing so with grace. Although it was part of his being, it was not by choice. He rose above it and faced life's many challenges head on and with determination. Until now, I have not had the guts to get any tattoos, but since Silas had so much courage to deal with the hand he was dealt, I will be getting one to honor his memory. As you can see on the back of your programs, the first tattoo he had was on his right shoulder. I will do the same, but with Atlas holding the world. It will represent him in so many ways and will be a constant reminder of his strength and fortitude. My brother died in his prime, and that is how he will be remembered forever and always. I knew him better than anyone else in this world, and now I will have to carry on without him by my side, although he will have a prominent place in my thoughts each day, sitting on my shoulder and whispering messages in my ear from across the universe. Silas, your ashes will take a place of honor in our family plot tomorrow, as we break ground there for the first time, nestled in amongst the trees on the Rocktoss Farm, next to a stone wall built by our ancestors centuries ago. We were always so proud of being the 11th generation of Bryants to live on our road after the king granted land to our family in the original Town Charter from 1766. You will have returned to your roots far before the time was right. As wooden roots slowly begin to embrace your urn, we will all come to visit you as often as we can. Echoes of us exploring in these woods together, building rock towers in the river and tobogganing in the sand pit just a stone's throw away, will reverberate through time. Someday we will all take our rightful places beside you on the riverbank together again, watching the world go by forevermore. I love you more than you ever knew, Silas. Rest easy, my friend, my brother, my lifelong companion. And now, Randy Ouellette is on trumpet. He taught Silas how to play the trumpet. He taught me how to play trombone. And he will now end this lovely celebration with taps. After taps, I think that the weather might be a little iffy for some drone. Where are my drone guys? What do you think? Yeah? Okay. Okay, after taps, we will all walk out there into the field briefly, and we'll hopefully get a drone photo of all of us standing very quickly before we all get wet, and then we have a lot of food to consume. If you have more stickers, we could put them here for people to take. And now I will turn the floor over to Randy. Thank you so much.